Nexus seems incredibly vast and hard to manage. What's Nexus analysis and how are firms navigating that today?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think there's a multitude of ways firms do it, but it is vast and it has to be established on behalf of the taxpayer. So the truth about Nexus is that each company has a different footprint, and the way firms address that is through a series of communications back and forth between the taxpayer. Historically, it's been really bad. It's emails, it's PDF forms, sometimes it's a web form, but it's a series of questions you have to ask about the business. And it's usually what I call firmographic information or the biographical information about the corporation. So headquarters, office locations, employee locations, there's a slew of things you have to determine.
Sure.
And some of them represent physical footprint and some of them represent economic footprint. But you have to combine the two together under the new law. And so classically, firms have used Excel, PDF, Word, email. None of those are great options because they generally mean something gets dropped, the data gets entered incorrectly into a new system, somebody forgets something, and so that's not a collective or collaborative or even comprehensive approach to it in today's world.
And it's time consuming.
It's horribly time consuming because once you have this data, then you have to do tax law research about the data. So that's typically using the tax tools that have been out there. Some of them are subscription services, and some of them are books, and that people look up, the state and local jurisdictions for each of the states where there's a footprint. They apply that. I've seen some incredibly voluminous Excel workbooks, that 15, 18, 27 sheets on it that have VLOOKUPs. It's not an ideal scenario, and oftentimes that deliverable to the taxpayer is less than ideal. They don't understand it.
And so leading firms are using technology to solve for that?
They should. I mean, leading firms still have this inundated in their processes. They still use a lot of manual processes, but there are shifts secularly to and transitional shifts to cloud-based computing products that are more of a SOC 2 layer and that they can actually capture that data and do something with that data. It's important to note that if you don't have an accurate read on that customer profile, the taxpayer profile, you cannot render an accurate scope of services. Each one of those questions and answers represents a whole series of scope of services that your firm should be able to provide if you want your taxpayer compliant with all the laws.
You're talking about a lot of client data and most of it sounds sensitive. Why is it important to firms to keep that secure?
Oh, that's interesting. It's a great question too, because I think for many years we didn't consider that data as important as it is. But oftentimes in the profile, the gathering of the customer profile, there will be pieces of information that indicate employees' home addresses because they're working from home now. Could be social security numbers for taxpayers and shareholders. It's the FEIN number of the corporation itself. It's location of inventory. If you're selling sensitive inventory, semiconductors, technology products, you may not want people to know where that inventory is housed or located. So there's a lot of reasons why you'd want to secure that data, but it primarily results from a lot of it is personal.
So Robert, how is LumaTax doing economic nexus analysis differently?
That's a great question, Valerie. We view it slightly differently than most. We figure there's three pieces to it. It's the capture of the client profile data, it's the capture of the transactional data, and it's the implementation of law. And so our portal is broken up into these three segments. So segment one is how do we capture that data? And that's that sensitive information and survey questions about the customer's footprint and profile and where they're located, where their business is. The second part of it is that we capture the data with a very powerful data normalization and data modeling tool. And that data modeling tool gets combined with the corporate information to start giving a better footprint, a more comprehensive footprint of how that business conducts itself.
So those are the transactions?
Those are the transactions. And then those transactions will have enough information for us to apply this law, which is a very large piece of our software that takes every state's threshold, transaction count, dollar amounts, whether they're taxable or non-taxable, and those types of information around the law, and provides a deliverable to the taxpayer. It also considers whether or not the transactions were conducted by the taxpayer or whether the transactions were conducted under the marketplace facilitator regimes. So when you look at it in total, you'll get not only the threshold, the date that you first crossed the threshold, you'll be informed as whether or not you should do a timely or untimely registration. You'll also be informed if a voluntary disclosure should be a useful tool to you, and you'll have the exact dollar amount that your taxpayer owes in every taxing jurisdiction as part of the exposure report.
And you'll be able to use that information to advise your clients on how to proceed forward, right?
It serves as a deliverable for the client. It's a fully it's a map-based deliverable that tells them all the information about each state, each taxing location that they've hit thresholds in or exceeded the thresholds, and what they should do next.
Awesome. So if I'm maybe a bit new to sales tax as an accountant or even experienced, I can really securely collect the data from the clients, get their transaction data in, and LumaTax is more or less taking care of the rest and pointing me in the right direction to service them?
As far as the law goes, for sure. We keep that law up to date, and so that you won't really have to understand the law. You won't have to go look up all the thresholds. You won't have to look up the threshold registration periods and the grace periods. That's all built into the application.
Awesome.